Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And both of you, thank you for your service. I mean it sincerely. I think the candor by which you answer these questions and your availability, your accessibility to the members of this committee, and I know others, is very much appreciated. And for me, as a newer member and certainly focusing a lot of my time on this committee on the Indo-Pacific issues, your expertise, your service is, the people from Missouri appreciate it too. So just wanted to say that. Following up, I feel like Senator Kelly stole the question that I wanted to have. We've recently written a letter actually to Secretary Austin about this ongoing harassment that happens with the fishing in the South China Sea and particularly the Filipino vessels. And it just feels like this thing is there's a trajectory to all this. Currently, these are not technically PRC Navy vessels, Coast Guard. I mean, they're all sort of one and the same in many ways, right? But where do you see? I mean, if you were to predict where this is going and what we need to do to deter this, and it's sort of a follow up to the previous question is, in a concrete way, what are a couple of things that we could do tomorrow to help discourage this? Because it does feel like we're headed down a road here, and we've got obviously a mutual defense agreement with the Philippines, that this thing could escalate quicker than people probably realize.
Yeah, thanks, Senator. So militarily, again, we execute joint patrols. We operate with our Philippine partners in the vicinity in order to ensure that we can demonstrate resolve. But I've also advocated for a broad set of the global nations to identify and speak out against this belligerent bad behavior that's not in accordance with the international community's interpretation of UNCLOS, and to validate the 2016 tribunal against China's illegal claim that that is Chinese sovereign territory. It is not. So articulating that, and not just from the Philippines, not just from the Philippines and the United States. I'm talking about the EU nations, I'm talking about the UK, I'm talking about the Middle Eastern nations, and I'm talking about the Pacific nations, right? This is one step today. This is not an Indo-Pacific problem. This is going to be a global problem.
Right, and they're also, the CCP is now making claims, additional claims in Vietnam, right? And they're sort of marking additional territory. Who else do you see sort of, I mean, clearly by China showing their fangs here, there are some folks who maybe didn't want to pick a team are certainly coming our way, which, who else? We got the Philippines, Vietnam. Who are some other, and Australia, of course, in the South China Sea there. Who else do you think is sort of seen this aggression for what it is?
Yeah, Senator, first, a comment on your first point. Number one, the United States doesn't ask any nations to choose. We support the rights of all nations to have sovereign territory as defined by law. We support their freedoms, their voice in the international community, where everyone gets an equal voice to be able to articulate their needs and security needs. So that's what we stand for. Again, we're not asking them to pick sides.
Yeah, you're not. I know you're not.
That said, all of the, right? I've asked for this discussion globally, and I've worked with General Cavoli to help identify this, and we're seeing it from UK and the EU nations. More of them are going to deploy to the Pacific. The ASEAN nations are critically important. The centrality of ASEAN is important to the region. And it's not that they're not seeing it. It's a concern about speaking out and being at risk for follow-on PRC economic coercion and other behaviors that will negatively impact their nation. So the concern is not do they see it, it's will they be able to talk about it.
Well, it's certainly my hope that whether it's the Belt and Road Initiative or BRICS, that other countries are seeing this, and the levers that China has then, once they've got their hooks into you, they're real. General, I want to ask you, I know that traditionally there's been, sort of the Korean Peninsula was its own sort of thing, the South China thing was its own sort of thing. I think that we've realized that this is all obviously very interconnected. How do you see this moving forward? Because clearly, what we do, our friends and our allies, and the support that we have in the Korean Peninsula and those strategic alliances that we do have matter, I think, for deterrence with China. How do you see that as a development? And I think you've been a great leader on this point.
Thanks, Senator. I think that what starts locally goes regional and globally pretty quickly. And we're seeing it, there were impacts with COVID, there were impacts with Ukraine, globally that we feel on the peninsula. And, our focus is on protecting the Korean people. As the United Nations commander, it's to maintain the armistice, but it's to react. The inherent right of self-defense never goes away, so we will protect ourselves. Response requires consultation with our Korean allies, and then any kind of retaliation or further escalation, I think we've always got to be prepared for. If somebody tries to take advantage of an incident or crisis someplace else in the Indo-Pacific.
Thank you both again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Rosen.